David Pierce stared up at the massive circular ship hovering above the United Nations headquarters in Geneva. After 3 weeks of its silent presence, humanity had finally received communication. The aliens wanted to meet with Earth's representatives. As the UN's top diplomatic advisor at only 32, David found himself on the welcoming committee despite his relative youth. "Ready for this, Pierce?" General Williams asked, adjusting his dress uniform. "As ready as anyone can be for first contact with an alien species," David replied, straightening his tie. At 6 feet tall with an athletic build, dark hair, and piercing blue eyes, David normally commanded respect in diplomatic circles. Today, he felt distinctly small. The ship's underside shimmered, revealing an opening. A beam of blue light touched down on the landing pad 50 yards ahead. Within seconds, 3 figures materialized, and David's breath caught in his throat. They were enormous. The smallest stood at least 14 feet tall, while the largest, clearly female, towered over them at what had to be 18 feet. Their skin gleamed with a subtle blue-violet iridescence, like mother of pearl. Though humanoid in general shape, their proportions were different: longer necks, broader shoulders, and digitigrade legs ending in 3-toed feet. Their faces featured large, almond-shaped eyes that shimmered with shifting colors. "Holy!" Williams whispered. The tallest alien stepped forward, her movements graceful despite her imposing size. She wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor of an unknown metal that caught the sunlight in rainbow patterns. Her hair, if it could be called that, was a mass of tendrils that shifted colors between deep purple and midnight blue. "I am Ambassador Zara Kethvalara of the Korathi Confederation," she announced, her voice resonating with a melodic quality that seemed to bypass their ears and vibrate directly in their minds. "We come in peace to establish relations with Earth." David stepped forward. "Ambassador, I am David Pierce, diplomatic advisor to the United Nations Secretary-General. Welcome to Earth." The alien's gaze locked onto him, and David felt a strange sensation wash over him, like being scanned from the inside out. The massive being tilted her head, her eyes shifting to a bright gold. "You," she said, pointing a long, elegant finger at David. "You will be my companion during negotiations." The UN Secretary-General stepped forward. "Ambassador Pierce is certainly qualified to assist." "No," Zara interrupted. "You misunderstand. Among the Korathi, high-ranking diplomats choose a personal companion from the visited species. It is our way of establishing trust and demonstrating our commitment to peaceful relations." David found his voice. "What exactly does being a companion entail, Ambassador?" Her lips curved into what might have been a smile. "You will remain with me throughout negotiations. You will teach me your customs, and I will teach you ours. You will join me on my vessel when I return to it. Your safety and well-being will be my responsibility." A murmur ran through the human delegation. The Secretary-General pulled David aside. "This is unexpected," she whispered. "We can't force you to accept." David considered the situation. This could be the diplomatic opportunity of a lifetime: direct access to the alien ambassador. "I'll do it," he decided. If it's their custom, refusing could damage relations before they've even begun. When he stepped forward to accept, Zara's eyes shifted to a brilliant azure. "Excellent. The bond will now be established." "Bond?" David asked, but before anyone could react, Zara reached down and placed her massive hand against his chest. A warm sensation spread through his body, accompanied by a faint blue glow where her skin touched his. "What are you doing?" General Williams demanded, reaching for his sidearm. "Peace, human," one of the other aliens said. "The companion bond is sacred and harmless. It merely establishes a basic empathic and linguistic connection." When Zara removed her hand, David felt different, lighter somehow, and with a strange awareness of her presence, like a compass needle drawn to north. The bond is established, Zara announced. David Pierce is now under Korathi protection and will serve as my companion during our diplomatic mission. The Secretary General looked concerned. Ambassador Pierce, are you all right? David nodded, still processing the strange new sensation. I'm fine. I can feel something. A connection. You will become accustomed to it, Zara said. The bond allows basic emotional awareness and will accelerate your learning of our language. The initial diplomatic meeting proceeded with remarkable smoothness after that, though David kept getting distracted by flashes of Zara's emotions, curiosity, amusement, occasional impatience. By evening, arrangements had been made for the human delegation to visit the Korathi vessel the following day. As the aliens prepared to return to their ship, Zara turned to David. You will come with me now. Now? I wasn't expecting to leave immediately. I need to pack some belongings, inform my family. You may gather necessities quickly. The bond is new and should not be stretched by distance at this stage. The Secretary General intervened. Ambassador, surely a few hours. The physiological requirements of the bond are non-negotiable, Zara stated firmly. David will experience increasing discomfort if separated from me for more than a few hours in these early stages. After approximately 1 Earth week, the bond will stabilize. David felt trapped, but the diplomatic importance of maintaining good relations won out. I'll need 1 hour to gather my things and make arrangements. Zara nodded. Acceptable. I will wait. 90 minutes later, David found himself entering the alien vessel, a duffel bag of hastily packed belongings in hand. The interior was vast, with soaring ceilings to accommodate the Korathi's height. The architecture featured flowing, organic lines and surfaces that seemed to shift colors subtly with the lighting. Your quarters will adjoin mine, Zara informed him, leading him through corridors where other Korathi stopped to stare curiously at the human in their midst. I have had them modified to human proportions and environmental requirements. That was thoughtful, David managed, trying not to gawk at the advanced technology surrounding him. The companion bond is a serious responsibility, Zara replied. Your comfort and safety are paramount. When they reached his quarters, David was surprised to find the room indeed scaled to human proportions, with familiar-looking furniture and amenities. How did you prepare this so quickly? He asked. We have been observing Earth for some time, Zara replied matter-of-factly. Rest now. Tomorrow will bring many new experiences. Left alone, David sat heavily on the bed, trying to process everything. Through the strange new bond, he could sense Zara's presence nearby, a mixture of satisfaction and curiosity. He realized with sudden clarity that his life had irrevocably changed. For better or worse, he was now bound to an 18-foot alien ambassador who seemed determined to keep him close. As he unpacked his meager belongings, David wondered what he'd gotten himself into, and whether he'd ever truly be free again. David woke disoriented, momentarily forgetting where he was until the cool blue lighting and unusually high ceiling reminded him he was aboard an alien vessel, bonded to an 18-foot ambassador. Through the bond, he sensed Zara approaching before the door chimed. Enter, he called, still adjusting to how the room's systems responded to voice commands. Zara ducked through the doorway, her iridescent skin catching the light. I trust you rested adequately? As well as could be expected, David replied, noting how the bond felt stronger today. He could sense her curiosity in something like anticipation. Today you begin learning Korathi customs. Your diplomatic team will arrive in 4 hours. She gestured to a table where a strange apparatus sat. First, we share morning sustenance. The breakfast consisted of nutrient capsules for him, analyzed for human compatibility, and a luminescent gel for her. As they ate, David observed her movements, deliberate, precise, almost ritualistic. In Korathi culture, Zara explained, companions occupy a unique position. You are neither servant nor equal, but something between, trusted advisor, cultural interpreter, and—" She paused, searching for the word, anchor. Anchor? Karathi experience emotions intensely. Companions help stabilize us during diplomatic missions. The bond allows us to borrow your emotional equilibrium. David frowned. So I'm essentially emotional support? That simplifies it considerably, but contains truth. Zara's eyes shifted to amber. Your species' emotional range is narrower but more stable. It is valuable. Throughout the day, David struggled with the physical realities of Karathi society. Everything was scaled for beings nearly 3 times his height. He needed assistance reaching controls, sitting at tables, and navigating the ship. While Zara had thoughtfully provided human-scaled furniture in designated areas, moving through the vessel often required her assistance. The diplomatic meetings proved challenging. Earth representatives stared openly at the Karathi, failing to hide their discomfort at the alien size. Meanwhile, David noticed the Karathi delegation frequently touching each other, hands on shoulders, fingers brushing arms, maintaining constant physical connection. Why all the touching? He whispered to Zara during a recess. Karathi are physically connected from birth. Isolation is painful for us. Her massive hand rested lightly on his shoulder. The companion bond substitutes this connection when we travel. David suddenly understood why she seemed to always be within arm's reach of him. That's why you needed me immediately, you were isolated. Zara nodded. Your understanding grows. The cultural differences extended beyond physical contact. Karathi communication involved subtle color changes in their eyes and skin, conveying emotional nuances that humans couldn't perceive. Similarly, they struggled with human facial expressions, finding them too subtle. Your species communicates much through micro-expressions, Zara noted after a particularly tense negotiation about resource sharing. It is inefficient. Says the species that turns blue when annoyed, David retorted, having noticed the pattern in her skin tone. To his surprise, Zara laughed, a melodic sound that reverberated pleasantly through the bond. Perhaps we both have communicative inefficiencies. That evening, Zara introduced David to the ship's recreational area, where off-duty Karathi engaged in what appeared to be dance-like movements in pairs and trios, their bodies flowing in synchronized patterns. Bond-strengthening exercises, Zara explained. All Karathi practice them daily. Even with companions? Especially with companions. Our bond would benefit from similar practice. Before David could protest, Zara had guided him to an open space. What followed was part dance, part martial art, and part meditation. Despite their size difference, Zara moved with incredible grace, supporting and guiding him through movements designed to synchronize their energies. To David's astonishment, he could feel the bond strengthening, becoming more defined, more nuanced. By the end of the session, he not only sensed Zara's emotions but could distinguish subtleties within them. That was remarkable, he admitted, breathing heavily from exertion. The bond grows, Zara agreed, her eyes a pleased violet. Soon you will access deeper levels of connection. Later that night, alone in his quarters, David received an encrypted call from General Williams. Pierce, tell me honestly, are you being coerced? Williams demanded. No, General. It's strange but not threatening. I believe this companion arrangement is genuinely their diplomatic custom. We've been researching similar protocols in Earth cultures. The closest parallels are ancient practices where emissaries exchanged family members as peace guarantees. Williams frowned. Essentially, you're a high-class hostage. David considered this. I don't think that's accurate. The bond seems designed for mutual benefit. They need emotional stabilization from us as much as we need their technology. Just be careful. We don't fully understand their intentions. After the call ended, David sensed Zara's concern through the bond. Moments later, his door chimed. "Your emotional state is turbulent," she said, entering without waiting for permission. "Something troubles you. My people worry about this arrangement. They don't understand it." Zara settled onto the floor, bringing her face closer to his level. "What troubles you specifically?" "The imbalance. You're essentially keeping me. I have limited freedom, limited agency." Her expression softened. "The companion bond is not ownership, David. It is mutual protection and cultural exchange. In Karathi history, many companions have become the most respected interpreters between civilizations. And what happens when the diplomatic mission ends? The bond remains, but distance becomes tolerable. Many companions choose to remain with their Karathi, becoming permanent ambassadors. Others return to their worlds, maintaining periodic contact. So I'm not permanently tied to you? The bond is permanent, but not restrictive once matured." Her eyes shifted to a reassuring blue. "You will always have choices, David." That night, David dreamed of soaring through star-filled skies, a massive protective presence beside him. When he woke, he realized the dream had been Zara's, bleeding through their strengthening bond. The following days brought new challenges as David attempted to explain human concepts like privacy, independence, and personal space, all limited on the Karathi vessel. Meanwhile, he struggled to understand their collective consciousness, their need for constant connection, and their incredibly complex social hierarchy. "Your translator calls me ambassador, but that doesn't fully capture your position, does it?" David asked Zara one evening, having noticed how other Karathi deferred to her. "I am Zara Kethvalara, third resonance of the Eighth Harmonic Council," she replied. "The closest human concept might be diplomatic royal." David stared at her. "Your royalty? Why wasn't I told? All council members select companions. It is our duty to form the deepest connections with new species." Her expression became serious. "There is something else you should understand about the bond, David. Its true purpose extends beyond emotional stabilization." "What do you mean?" "The Karathi once encountered a species that appeared peaceful but harbored violent intentions. Many died before the deception was discovered. Since then, the companion bond serves another purpose, truth verification. Through the deep connection, lies become impossible to maintain." David felt a chill. "So I'm a living lie detector for Earth? And you are our guarantee of genuine peaceful intent." Zara's eyes met his. "The bond goes both ways, David. I cannot deceive you either." As David processed this revelation, an alarm blared through the ship. Zara's skin paled to nearly white. "What's happening?" David demanded. "We have received warning. A faction opposed to interspecies contact has learned of our mission." Her eyes darkened to midnight blue. "They are coming, David. And they believe companions like you must be eliminated to preserve Karathi purity." Through the bond, David felt something he'd never expected from the towering ambassador, fear, not for herself, but for him. David's quarters transformed into a secure room within seconds, reinforced walls sliding into place as Zara pulled him toward an alcove. "The purists have tracked us," she explained, activating a console. "They believe interspecies bonds dilute Karathi evolution. They've attempted sabotage of diplomatic missions before, but never so boldly." The main viewscreen showed a sleek, predatory vessel approaching, black with crimson markings, distinctly Karathi in design but more aggressive. "Commander North," Zara's voice hardened. "Eighth Harmonic's most vocal opponent." Lieutenant Vex, Zara's security chief, appeared on the communication panel. "Ambassador, we've detected unusual energy signatures, possible teleportation technology. They may attempt direct infiltration. Protect the human delegation," Zara ordered. Through their bond, David felt her calculating possible scenarios with remarkable speed. Escort them to emergency shuttles. David remains with me. Shouldn't I join the other humans? David asked. No. Her eyes flashed deep purple. You're their primary target. The bond makes you valuable, both as hostage and as propaganda. If captured, they'd use you to demonstrate supposed human manipulation of Korathi leadership. The ship shuddered under sudden impact. Alarm klaxons blared as Zara received tactical updates through her neural interface. They've deployed boarding parties, she said grimly. We must reach the secure command center. Moving through the vessel became a nerve-wracking exercise. Zara's massive form provided protection as they navigated corridors occasionally flashing with the light of energy weapons. Twice they diverted to avoid confrontation. David felt eerily calm, until he realized the sensation wasn't his. You're suppressing my fear through the bond. Partially, Zara admitted. A tactical necessity. Full panic would overload our connection. They reached a secure lift that required Zara's biometric authorization. As they descended to lower decks, David asked the question weighing on him. These purists, what exactly do they want? Korathi isolation. Technological independence. They believe interspecies contact weakens us. Her expression darkened. Particularly, they oppose companion bonds. To them, connecting emotionally with lesser species represents evolutionary regression. The lift stopped abruptly between floors, emergency lights activating. They're attempting override, Zara whispered, drawing a weapon from her armor, an elegant, curved device that hummed with energy. Stay behind me. The lift ceiling panel exploded inward. 3 Korathi infiltrators dropped down, each wearing black armor with distinctive red symbols. Though smaller than Zara, they still towered over David. Surrender the human, third resonance, the lead infiltrator demanded. This abomination must end. Zara moved with unexpected speed for her size. Her weapon discharged controlled bursts of energy that forced the attackers back. Meanwhile, she positioned herself protectively between David and danger. One attacker lunged toward David, but Zara anticipated the move through their shared awareness. She incapacitated the assailant with a precise strike, then activated her emergency beacon. The remaining infiltrators retreated through the lift ceiling. Moments later, ship security arrived, securing the area. They specifically targeted you, Zara noted, checking David for injuries. The purists have evolved from political opposition to militant extremism. In the command center, the situation clarified. The purist vessel maintained distance while deploying smaller craft. Earth's defensive platforms had activated but remained in standby mode, awaiting diplomatic resolution. Their timing is deliberate, Zara observed. They're exploiting the sensitive negotiation phase, knowing we cannot risk military escalation with Earth observing. Admiral Thorin, the vessel's commander, approached. Ambassador, we've contained the infiltrators, but Commander Norith requests direct communication with you and your companion. The main view screen activated, revealing a Korathi male with steel-gray skin and piercing red eyes. Intricate scarification marked his face, traditional purist symbols. Third resonance, he acknowledged Zara. And the human contamination. His gaze shifted to David with undisguised contempt. State your purpose, Commander, Zara replied coldly. I come with warning and opportunity. The Eighth Harmonic Council overreaches. Humans are unprepared for true integration. Their emotional immaturity makes them dangerous companions. Norith leaned forward. Surrender your companion for evaluation. Prove human compatibility or admit this experiment has failed. The companion bond is sacred and protected by ancient law, Zara countered. Your actions violate multiple Confederation protocols. Protocols established before we understood the dangers of inferior species. Noratha's eyes narrowed. We've studied humans. Their history overflows with violence, betrayal, and self-destruction. They cannot stabilize Karathi consciousness, they will corrupt it. David stepped forward. Commander, with respect, you've misunderstood human Karathi compatibility. Our emotional differences complement rather than contaminate. Noratha's expression twisted with disgust. It speaks as though equal. This demonstrates the corruption already spreading. He addressed Zara again. You have 6 hours to surrender the human. Otherwise, we will take more decisive action. The transmission ended abruptly. He's bluffing, Admiral Thorin said. Even purists wouldn't risk interspecies war. No, he's sincere, David replied. Through the bond, he'd sensed something disturbing during the conversation. Zara, he truly believes humans are dangerous. There's genuine fear beneath his hatred. Zara nodded. David's assessment aligns with my reading. Norath considers this a preventative action, protecting Karathi future by eliminating human influence early. Security reports confirmed purist sympathizers had infiltrated multiple decks. Worse, Earth's delegation remained vulnerable despite protective measures. We should return the human delegation to Earth immediately, Admiral Thorin suggested. Agreed, Zara said. But David must remain. Separating us now would destabilize the bond, potentially causing neural damage to both of us. David processed this new information with alarm. You never mentioned neural damage. It becomes relevant only under extreme circumstances, Zara explained. Like forced separation during the bonding phase. As preparations began for evacuating the Earth delegation, David received another encrypted call, this time from the Secretary-General herself. Pierce, our intelligence suggests this conflict extends beyond diplomatic disagreement. The purists have studied Earth extensively, they've monitored our communications, analyzed our conflicts. They believe we represent existential threat to Karathi culture. They're wrong, David insisted. The bond has shown me Karathi consciousness. We're different but compatible. Perhaps, but perception creates reality in diplomacy. These purists perceive danger. She hesitated. Some military advisors suggest we should extract you forcibly. That would be disastrous, David replied firmly. The bond is real, and separation could cause permanent damage. More importantly, it would confirm purist propaganda about human untrustworthiness. Through the bond, he felt Zara's approval, and something deeper, a growing trust that transcended mere diplomatic necessity. As night cycle began aboard the vessel, security measures intensified. Zara insisted David remain in her personal quarters, the most secure location available. The space dwarfed him, designed for her 18-foot frame, but contained a human-scaled section where he could rest comfortably. The purists will not attack directly while Earth watches, Zara said, reviewing security protocols. But they may attempt extraction during night cycle. Why do they fear the companion bond so deeply? David asked. Zara settled beside him, reducing their height difference by sitting. Because it works. Throughout Karathi history, companion bonds have led to peaceful integration between previously hostile species. Purists fear this dilutes our distinctiveness, our evolutionary advantages. And does it? It transforms us, she admitted. But evolution itself is transformation. The purists cling to an idealized past that never truly existed. David sensed deeper meaning in her words. There's more you're not telling me. Zara's eyes shifted to midnight blue, a color he now recognized as signifying difficult truth. The companion bond eventually allows genetic compatibility, she said quietly. After years of neural synchronization, DNA transfer becomes possible between bonded species. You mean reproduction? cross-species children. Not immediately, but eventually. This is what purists truly fear, biological integration through bonding. David processed this revelation with shock. Why wasn't this disclosed earlier? Because it requires years of deep bonding. Most companions never reach that stage. Her expression softened. I should have explained sooner. The possibility existed theoretically, but seemed irrelevant to immediate diplomatic concerns. Before David could respond, the quarter's defensive systems activated. Emergency lighting bathed the room in red. Through the bond, he felt Zara's alarm spike sharply. "They're here," she whispered, drawing her weapon. "They've bypassed primary security." The door mechanism engaged, someone attempting override. Zara positioned herself protectively, but David noticed her hands trembling slightly. "You're afraid," he realized. "Not for myself." Her eyes met his. "For you. For what we represent. If the purists succeed, it damages not just Earth-Korathi relations but the entire foundation of Confederation diplomacy." The door exploded inward as purist commandos breached the chamber. In the chaos that followed, David glimpsed Zara fighting with extraordinary skill despite being outnumbered. Through their bond, he felt her determination, her protective instinct, and beneath it, a growing realization. The purists hadn't come just to capture a human companion. They'd come specifically for him, because somehow, they knew the bond between him and Zara had already progressed far beyond normal diplomatic connection. As a stun weapon discharged nearby, David's last conscious thought was understanding why they posed such threat to purist ideology. It wasn't just any companion bond they feared. Perhaps both. Her massive hand enveloped his gently. "The important question remains, what do you choose, now that you understand the full implications?" David considered everything, the neural changes, the shared consciousness, the profound connection transcending species boundaries. Through the bond, he sensed Zara's careful neutrality, deliberately avoiding influencing his decision. "I choose to continue," he said finally. "Not just as diplomatic necessity, but as exploration of possibility. Human-Korathi integration represents something unprecedented, something worth pursuing despite purist objections." Relief and joy radiated through their connection. Beyond words, they shared understanding that transcended verbal communication. As they prepared to resume diplomatic functions, Dr. Villara requested audience. Having defected from the purists, she'd been granted provisional scientific status pending review. "Your bond demonstrates neural architecture I never anticipated," she explained, presenting research findings. The human brain's adaptability combined with Korathi consciousness creates something evolutionarily novel, a hybrid awareness with characteristics of both species yet entirely unique. "Is that sustainable long-term?" David asked. "That's precisely what makes your case significant," Villara replied. Traditional assumptions suggested incompatibility causing eventual neural degradation. Your experience demonstrates the opposite, strengthening through complementary adaptation. As they prepared to return to Earth orbit, David realized how profoundly the abduction had transformed their relationship. What began as diplomatic protocol had evolved into something unprecedented, a genuine interspecies partnership where neither dominated nor submitted, but instead created something entirely new. The purists had inadvertently accelerated precisely what they feared most, proving that under pressure, different species didn't corrupt each other, but rather adapted together, creating resilient new possibilities neither could achieve alone. The rhythmic beeping of unfamiliar medical equipment greeted David as consciousness returned. Pain radiated through his temples, and the bond, previously a constant presence, felt stretched thin, like an elastic band pulled to breaking point. "He's waking," a voice announced. David opened his eyes to find himself aboard a smaller vessel. 3 purist Korathi monitored him from a safe distance. Medical restraints secured his limbs to an examination table scaled for their massive size, making him appear childlike by comparison. Commander North entered, his scarification patterns more prominent under the harsh lighting. The human survives. Impressive resilience. Where's Zara? David demanded, feeling the bond's distant pull. The third resonance pursues us, naturally. North gestured to a viewscreen showing stars streaking past. We're currently traveling at maximum speed toward purist territory. She follows, but cannot intercept before we reach sanctuary. David assessed his situation. The bond's tenuous connection suggested substantial distance between him and Zara, yet he could still sense her determination and mounting concern. The separation causes you pain, North observed clinically. Fascinating. The neural entanglement progressed further than anticipated. A female purist, introduced as Dr. Villara, approached with scanning equipment. Commander, preliminary analysis confirms abnormal bond development. Neural synchronization exceeds standard diplomatic parameters. Northa's expression darkened. As suspected. The third resonance initiated deep bonding procedures. What exactly do you want from me? David asked, fighting through the discomfort. Study. Evidence. Verification of our warnings. North gestured toward monitoring equipment. Your bond represents precisely the danger we've predicted, accelerated integration threatening Korathi biological distinctiveness. Dr. Villara continued scanning. Commander, the human's neural patterns show adaptation to Korathi wavelengths. His brain physically reconfigures to accommodate the bond. Document everything, North ordered. This evidence will convince the Harmonic Council of human incompatibility. David realized their intent, not merely abduction, but using him as scientific proof justifying anti-human policies. You're manipulating data to support predetermined conclusions. Northa's eyes flashed crimson. We seek truth. The bond corrupts both species, diminishes evolutionary advantages through forced compatibility. There's nothing forced about it, David countered. Shared consciousness expands rather than diminishes. Spoken like one already compromised. North turned to his lieutenant. Maintain course. Maximum speed. The third resonance pursues with reinforcements. Left alone with his captors, David concentrated on the bond. Despite distance, he could sense Zara's presence growing stronger, not weaker, as if their separation paradoxically intensified connection. Focusing intently, he attempted sending deliberate thoughts through their link. Can you sense my location? 3 purists. Medical Bay. Heading toward sanctuary. Hours passed as David endured increasingly invasive examinations. Dr. Villara seemed genuinely fascinated by the bond's physiological manifestations. Unlike Northa's ideological disgust, her interest appeared scientifically motivated. Your neural architecture adapts remarkably well, she noted while reviewing scan results. Most species resist Korathi bonding. Humans demonstrate unusual neuroplasticity. Is that bad? It's unprecedented, she replied. The compatibility suggests evolutionary convergence despite vastly different origins. David seized the opportunity. Perhaps that indicates the bond is natural rather than corrupting. Villara's eyes shifted momentarily to contemplative green. An interesting hypothesis. Unfortunately, irrelevant to current purist doctrine. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the vessel. North returned, agitation evident in his rapidly shifting skin tones. The third resonance approaches with impossible speed, he announced. Defensive positions. Through the bond, David felt Zara's fierce determination, and something unexpected. Multiple Korathi consciousnesses linked with hers, amplifying her abilities. The sensation resembled a mental orchestra reaching crescendo. The vessel shuddered violently. Tractor technology, a purist officer reported. They're forcing deceleration. North raged. Impossible. No single vessel possesses such capability. It's not one vessel, David realized, understanding flowing through the bond. It's coordinated ships, working in harmonic convergence. The purist commander glared at him. Release countermeasures. Prepare boarding defenses. As chaos erupted around him, David concentrated on strengthening the bond. Distance had initially weakened their connection, but paradoxically, the separation had forced both his and Zara's minds to develop stronger pathways, adapting, evolving to maintain contact. I'm coming, her thoughts suddenly resonated clearly. The eighth harmonic deployed. Hold strong. The medical restraints suddenly released. Dr. Villara had discreetly freed him while Noreth focused on defense. Why? David whispered. Your bond's development contradicts purist assumptions, she replied softly. Scientific integrity demands unbiased investigation. The ship rocked violently as multiple impact points signaled boarding parties. Through the bond, David sensed Zara leading the assault personally, her determination mixed with consuming worry for his safety. Find environmental control, Villara instructed urgently. 8th level. You can reach auxiliary systems through maintenance passages. Navigating a vessel designed for beings 3 times his size proved challenging. David crawled through maintenance tunnels too small for Korathi, using the bond as compass. Each movement brought Zara's presence closer, stronger. He reached environmental controls as combat echoed through the vessel. Working quickly, he identified life support systems and initiated partial atmospheric modification, increasing oxygen levels in specific sectors while reducing them in others. The strategy worked. Purist defenders found themselves increasingly disoriented in oxygen-rich environments, while Zara's boarding party, forewarned through the bond, had adjusted their breathing apparatus accordingly. David sensed Zara approaching minutes before the environmental control room's massive door burst open. She filled the frame, 18 feet of righteous fury transformed instantly to profound relief upon seeing him. David, she breathed, crossing the distance between them in 2 massive strides. Their reunion intensified the bond exponentially. As physical contact re-established, their neural pathways synchronized with stunning clarity. For several moments, they experienced complete consciousness sharing, his memories becoming hers, her thoughts becoming his. The bond evolved during separation, Zara realized, wonder replacing concern. Accelerated adaptation through survival pressure. Security teams secured the vessel as Noreth and his officers were detained. Dr. Villara surrendered willingly, requesting formal recognition as scientific defector. The purists miscalculated, Zara explained as they returned to her ship. They believed separating us would weaken the bond. Instead, it forced rapid evolution, proving precisely what they feared most: humans and Korathi adapt to maintain connection. Admiral Thorin reported from the command vessel. Purist sanctuary coordinates extracted from navigation systems. The Harmonic Council has authorized preemptive security operation. Returned to Zara's quarters, David finally processed the ordeal's implications. They'll try again, won't they? Yes, but differently now. Zara settled beside him, their height difference less relevant as they synchronized through the bond. Our enhanced connection changes diplomatic calculations. We've demonstrated unprecedented compatibility. Through their strengthened bond, David perceived deeper complexity in Korathi politics. The purists represented more than mere xenophobia, they feared evolutionary change itself, clinging to genetic purity as shield against cosmic uncertainty. The abduction served one positive purpose, Zara noted. It accelerated our bonding beyond normal parameters. What typically requires years occurred in days under survival pressure. And now? Now we represent something new. Her eyes shifted to sparkling gold, excitement, discovery. A human Korathi bond demonstrating advanced neural synchronization. The Harmonic Council will recognize its diplomatic significance. That night, recovering from the ordeal, David experienced Zara's dreamscape with perfect clarity, soaring through stellar nurseries where new stars formed, diving through gas giants' atmospheric layers, witnessing civilizations rise across countless worlds. He understood the Korathi perspective more completely now, their thousand-year lifespans, their collective consciousness traditions, their perspectives spanning galaxies rather than nations. Meanwhile, through him, Zara comprehended human adaptability, emotional resilience, and creative problem-solving. As dawn cycle began aboard the vessel, they received surprising news. The Harmonic Council had unanimously voted to formally recognize their enhanced bond as diplomatically significant. Rather than dangerous corruption, they'd become living proof of successful integration. More significantly, Earth's representatives had requested their presence for continued negotiations, specifically requesting David maintain his companion status rather than being rescued or extracted. They recognized the bond's value, Zara observed with satisfaction. Or they've pragmatically accepted its necessity, David suggested.